What's one thing that you wish more people understood about chronic fatigue and brain fog?
For those who don't experience it, I wish they understood just how debilitating it is and how much it just kind of sucks life out of you. And so for them to be a little bit more understanding and generous with that experience. And then for those who do struggle with chronic fatigue and brain fog, for them to understand that you can get better. It can be a difficult journey, but rewarding nonetheless. A lot of times, especially if you're seeing conventional doctors, you can kind of get brainwashed into, sorry, we don't know what's going on. There's nothing we can do for you. This is just how you're going to have to live life now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Nourished Inside Out. I am here with Briana today, and she is a registered nurse and a certified hormone specialist. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm super excited to chat with you today.
Absolutely. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your background and how you became a registered nurse?
So, currently, what I do right now is I help women reverse fatigue and brain fog through healing their gut and balancing their hormones, mainly with cycle syncing and non toxic lifestyle. I got into this myself by getting really sick with Lyme disease back in 2016. And it kind of brought me to rock bottom with my health. I dealt a lot with the brain fog, the fatigue, memory loss, muscle tremors, all sorts of symptoms. And after I got better, I'm still working on it, but after I got better, I saw a lot of nurse practitioners and they actually inspired me to go into nursing. So I got my degree in nursing in 2021, and I'm actually going to be starting a nurse practitioner program in August of this year. So it's going to be a full circle moment, and hopefully I can specialize in Lyme disease once I'm done all that schooling.
That's a beautiful story of how you used your personal challenges that you've overcome to help others. I think that's like the most beautiful way to use your challenges. You talked a little bit about chronic fatigue and brain fog. Can you explain what they are and why they're so common today?
Yeah, for sure. So chronic fatigue is a little hard to understand if you've never experienced it, but it's basically like being tired on steroids. It's immense fatigue to the point where your muscles ache, your body aches. You're so tired that you can't bring yourself to do day-to-day tasks.
Mm.
So, for someone who's tired, maybe they can push through their work day. They can make it through the day. They're just tired. For someone who has fatigue in the chronic sense, they are unable to work. They're unable to do household duties and tasks because, in conjunction with the body fatigue, they also have the brain fog. And the brain fog is sort of where you're just living in this cloudiness. It's hard to think, hard to form sentences, hard to remember things. It's kind of everyone's kind of experienced the moment where they go into another room and they're kind of like, why am I here? What am I here for? It's living with that. Actually, a lot of people do deal with chronic fatigue and brain fog mainly because of the amount of toxicity that we live in our society, from the food, the way it's processed, real food like our whole foods, even those are void of nutrients because of the soil. But then we have the artificial food that's been pumped in with artificial colors. You have natural flavors that aren't really that natural. Um, Food fillers like the gums and stuff like that. Those are all toxic to your body. And then there's infections, there's nutrient deficiencies. There's a lot of different reasons, but people can develop these chronic symptoms.
Well, what are some causes of chronic fatigue and brain fog that we might not be aware of? Is it in the food? Is it in like daily habits? Where do they mostly come from?
It's sort of like a cumulative effect. It's not just like one thing you do that suddenly causes you to be fatigued like this.
Mhm.
It'll actually develop over years. So there's a theory that some practitioners like to call the water in a bucket, and it's basically you have a bucket and you keep filling it up with water Those are your symptoms. So you keep filling up with water, you feel fine, you feel fine. And then one last drop of water in that bucket now causes it to overflow. And so you can have, all of these different habits of using toxic hair products, for example, aluminum deodorant that's clogging your lymph nodes and not allowing you to sweat. It could be artificially made foods that are filled with, like I said, the colors and the gums and things like that, adding that to the bucket. It could be not exercising, so you're also not sweating. It could be thinking poorly about yourself all the time, so even your thoughts play a role. But basically, you're just kind of filling up this bucket, and you may have no symptoms until there's one more offending factor. It could be you get really sick with a UTI, or for some it's COVID, for some it's Lyme disease, for some it's just the flu, and then that extra, drop in the bucket now causes it to all overflow. And now you have all of these symptoms. And again, for some, that manifests as the chronic fatigue and the brain fog.
I really like that example of the bucket because it's just filling it up with things that can cause chronic fatigue and brain fog. Like you said, that last drop, it's going to overflow. If you're pouring a cup of water and you keep pouring and you don't stop, it's going to overflow. That's a great example. Can you explain how hormonal imbalances can play a role with these issues?
It's more so that those issues can cause the hormone imbalances,
Okay.
but then you have this kind of negative feedback loop where it perpetuates the issue. A lot of the hormone imbalances, particularly for females, will be the estrogen to progesterone imbalance. So, the female hormones would be estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And so testosterone is kind of in its own little bucket, but estrogen and progesterone, those ones become imbalanced. And particularly, it'll be estrogen is too high, progesterone is too low. And so women who have high estrogen will feel like they're brain fogged. They'll feel like they're bloated. They'll have skin issues. They'll start to develop nutrient deficiencies. And so those all kind of play a role with the brain fog and the fatigue. But there's things that you can do to help balance your hormones that kind of also play a role into helping regulate the toxicity levels in your body.
What are some things that you would recommend to regulate those hormonal levels to decrease brain fog and chronic fatigue?
So, the most important thing, in my opinion, is working on your gut health. So, if you have any symptoms of constipation, of bloating, any sort of acid reflux or GERD, excessive gas, those are all signs that your gut health is not optimal. And your gut health and your hormones are linked. So, your gut health plays a role in your immune system. It's also where your hormones are synthesized. So, any sort of dysregulation there is going to cause an imbalance with your hormones. So, if you do have symptoms of gut dysfunction, there are a lot of different root causes. Some of them are gut motility. So, that's just like literally you're not going to the bathroom, things aren't moving. It could be a bacterial overgrowth. It could be from an infection, bacterial overgrowth, but also could be fungus overgrowth like candida. So to help with those things, you want to make sure that your liver health is optimal. You want to make sure that your gallbladder health is optimal and your stomach acid levels are optimal. I can kind of go into those things, but those would be things that you would want to work on. And naturally, with your gut health improving, your hormones will start to balance themselves out. In addition to that, there's also foods that you can focus on that help with your gut health and with your hormone health.
What kind of foods would you recommend that people can incorporate into their diets on a daily basis or even a few times a week?
As far as stomach acid goes, that's going to be super important to make sure that your food digests and you are breaking down the protein that you digest. To help with that, you can take apple cider vinegar before your meal. You don't want to just take a big amount of apple cider vinegar. You're going to probably feel burning sensation, but you can do like half a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in like 3 ounces of water and drink that before your meal. And you should do that before each of your main meals until you feel like a burning sensation. Not the same as acid reflux, but it'll be more of like a burning in the upper stomach. That's an indication that you've reached optimal acid levels and you can back off the apple cider vinegar. So that's one thing you can start doing, particularly for your liver and gallbladder health. You want to focus on bitter vegetables. Those would be things like kale, arugula, Swiss chard, bok choy, cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. So those vegetables actually encourage your liver to make more bile. And bile is going to help bind to toxins and allow you to excrete them, to poop them out. So stomach acid, liver, gallbladder, bile, that all kind of goes together. And then there are other foods that you can eat, like depending where you're at in your cycle, depending on which phase you're in, that are going to help support estrogen and progesterone, and those will help balance your hormones as well.
Incredible. I know something that you talk about a lot is cycle syncing. Can you go into what that is and how people can incorporate that into planning their meals and how it can help with mental clarity?
So run through what each phase of your cycle is, and then what food would be good for that. So we got 4 phases in our cycle. During the menstruating years, of course, if you're in menopause, this is going to look different. You have your menstrual phase, which would be days like 1 through 5. Then you have your follicular phase, that's days 6 through 14. Ovulatory phase, 15 to 18. And then luteal phase, 19 to 30. Somewhere around there. Of course, everyone's like full cycle length is different, so it will fluctuate depending on how long your cycle is, but that's an estimate. So during your menstrual phase, this is when your hormones are at their lowest. This is when you're bleeding, and you want to do what you can to support your estrogen and progesterone levels since they're at their lowest. And so foods that are going to support that are going to be foods rich in iron. So that's going to be beets, the dark leafy greens, mushrooms, red meat, seafood. Those are going to be very supportive in your menstrual cycle. The iron, the B vitamins, supporting your energy levels. Naturally, women crave chocolate during this time, and that's because your body's craving those minerals, specifically magnesium. And that's actually, if you think about it, you're cramping. So your body's trying to relax you, alleviate those cramps. And magnesium does that. It's found in chocolate, a good quality chocolate. It's also going to be found in those dark leafy greens, blueberries, blackberries. If you seed cycle, which I love to do, you can incorporate pumpkin seeds and flax seeds. So, moving on into the next phase would be the follicular phase. And this is where your hormones, they just went from their lowest point, they're slowly starting to rise. Again, estrogen and progesterone. Oh, you want to support those levels still. Now that you're in this phase, the food that you're eating is going to change. Here, you want to focus on the cruciferous vegetables. This is going to help maintain that proper balance of estrogen and progesterone. You always want your progesterone levels to be higher in the ratio. Broccoli is a good option here. Carrots are helpful for helping to detoxify estrogen. Parsley, sauerkraut. And then the fruits you can focus on would be citrus fruits like oranges, are a good option. Cherries, avocados are good. There's not really a particular like meat here, but eggs, chicken, seafood, those are always good options. If you are seed cycling, pumpkin seeds and flax seeds are still a good option here. Pumpkin seeds, I didn't say this already, I don't think, are good for progesterone, and flax seeds help to detoxify estrogen. And moving into the ovulatory phase, this is the third phase of your cycle. Your hormones are now at their peak, they're at their highest level. And this is again where you really want to make sure that your estrogen is balanced with your progesterone. So you're going to want to be eating foods that help detoxify the estrogen, but increase and support the progesterone. So here we have, again, the cruciferous Brussels sprouts. Broccoli is still a good option here. The dark leafy greens, scallions, chives, asparagus. Fruit, you can do raspberries, strawberries, apricot. Here you want to think about this as like your inner summer. So all the like light and fresh food, a lot of salads, lots of summery fruits you can do. We're still maintaining with the same seeds here, flax seeds, pumpkin seeds. You can also add in chia seeds if you want. Moving on to the last phase would be the luteal phase. Now your hormones are starting to decline, come back down, and you're probably going to start to feel your energy levels coming back down towards they were when you were in your menstrual phase. That's because your hormones are declining. And we still want to make sure we're supporting our progesterone levels and aiding our body in detoxifying estrogen. Cabbage is a good option here. Broccoli and Brussels sprouts, the cruciferous vegetables. Garlic, ginger is good here. Onion, lots of hearty root vegetables. So, fun fact, during the luteal phase, your body requires more calories when you're going into your menstrual phase. It's why you feel like you're more hungry and more ravenous. Your calorie expenditure is increased. So, pumpkin, squash, sweet potato, apples, bananas, like those more calorie dense foods are going to be a good option here. And then this is when your seed cycling changes. You're going to want to do more sesame seeds and chia seeds. Really going to be the two main ones here. I still incorporate pumpkin seeds because they support progesterone. Then we're back to the seafood and red meat as the good options. So that's kind of a rundown on what food to eat. And personally for me, like I keep a list of those in my phone. So whenever I'm grocery shopping, I reference it. And so I can continue cycle syncing no matter where I'm at. I always have a little way to remember it.
That's all great information and great tips. How can people find out what's best for them? Because obviously everybody has different taste buds or different meal plans. Is it something they can Google or where can they find it?
If you literally just Google cycle syncing nutrition, a lot of information will come up. And yeah, it does take adjusting to your own palate. But I have found this is a really good way to increase your palate, to increase the food that you are eating. Naturally, each phase is a little different. It's going to force you to pick different food ideas to go for. For me personally, like I can't tolerate tomatoes, eggplants, potatoes, so I avoid them. And that just takes trial and error. Most people who are dealing with any sort of chronic illness, like the brain fog and chronic fatigue, typically have an intolerance to dairy and gluten and nightshades, but everyone's different. So you could keep a food journal. And actually that is what I suggest for my clients is to do a food journal. So for like 1 or 2 weeks, basically just write down what you're eating and then just note take any symptoms that you notice. You don't really have to do any like correlation right then and there. But for example, say you woke up and you had, I don't know, bread and butter on it with a side of eggs and like potatoes or something. I don't know. I'm just making it up. And then like an hour later, you notice like your stomach's really bloated and like you're really like gassy. Okay, write that down. And now as the week progresses, if you notice that same symptom after every time you have potatoes, that could be an indication that you're intolerant to them. Or if the symptoms seem to fluctuate, then maybe that's not the issue. But basically, what the food journal is supposed to help you with is connecting to your food and connecting to your body and trying to figure out what could be bothering you and what, is making you feel better. That's really going to be a personal journey for you because no doctor or practitioner or whatever can really tell you are not going to do well with this food specifically unless you've done like a food intolerance test. Um, that's really the only way to know for sure.
That's all great and super helpful. Thank you for sharing that. What are some common dietary mistakes that people make that can worsen their chronic fatigue or brain fog?
I would say the biggest one is, well, there's two biggest ones would be eating too much sugar. Sugar overburdens your liver, and your liver, like we kind of just, actually, I don't know if we discussed this. Your liver, it plays a huge role in detoxification. It eliminates excess hormones, harmful substances. It helps with nutrient absorption, with protein synthesis. Your liver does so much for you. And so that is why it's important to make sure you are living a non-toxic lifestyle, make sure you're eating the proper nutrients. Cycle syncing is a natural way to help you eat nutrient-dense foods. Protecting your liver and working on liver health is going to make sure that you are decreasing the symptoms of brain fog and fatigue. So, back to my original point, sugar overburdens the liver. And so you want to make sure that you're not eating a lot of sugar. And I'm not just talking about like the refined, white sugar, but for some people who are that sensitive, it could even be the potatoes. It could be like the root vegetables. It could be the fruit. So you got to be aware of that, and you can kind of go off symptoms. So, say you just had like a big fruit bowl of bananas and berries and other citrus fruits and stuff, and like an hour later you have a really bad headache and you feel really like you just crashed. That could be an indication that your blood sugar just spiked up. It doesn't have to just be from eating, pastries and breads and donuts. Another thing is you have those hidden sugars in your lattes. People love buying the sugary coffee drinks from Starbucks or whatever. Those are just laden with sugar. And especially on an empty stomach, so this is my point too, on an empty stomach, you really want to avoid caffeine and the sugary beverages and meals, because it's going to do the same thing. It's going to spike your blood sugar, and it's going to cause or exacerbate those symptoms of brain fog and fatigue.
That's a really great point as well. Not having coffee on an empty stomach, because even though, like,
Mhm.
sometimes once in a while I'll have coffee on an empty stomach, and I don't know if it's entirely what I'm feeling, but I think it's acid reflux. It just doesn't sit right. Is that a thing, acid reflux with coffee on an empty stomach?
Oh yeah, 100%. That's actually the one of the big reasons why you shouldn't be having coffee on an empty stomach, because coffee is acidic, and while your stomach, the acid is acidic too, you are actually increasing that stomach acid without any protection. Food is protection. So when you drink coffee on an empty stomach, you're actually increasing your chances of leaky gut. Leaky gut is what contributes to all of these autoimmune issues, these digestive issues, your hormone imbalances. It creates that never-ending cycle, really. So if you are someone, and I'm the same way, I love coffee first thing in the morning, and a lot of the times I don't wake up with an appetite. That is why I love seed cycling. That's why I love that, because I make these seed cycling energy balls. I just have two of those with my coffee in the morning, but that little bit of food right there blunts the negative effects of caffeine on the empty stomach.
Wow, that's such great information. Thank you. How important is stress management when it comes to chronic fatigue and brain fog?
Really important. Stress management and your energy management will help mitigate any flare-ups. So everyone is different with what amount of stress they can tolerate. But you really have to protect your peace, especially if you are chronically ill. You really have to limit who you let in, what you let in. You don't get so mentally stressed out. Some of that stuff's going to be a little hard to prevent. If you got to work, you got to work. And that's, probably going to stress you out. There's only so much you can do there. But, one example is that if you're in a relationship, or if you have kids and you know that they do certain things that just really irritate you, you're just going to have to accept it, because the constant bickering, or the constant trying to make people do things that they don't want to do, like that kind of energy, just really negative for you and can stress you out. And in conjunction with that, doing things that are going to cause you to overexert yourself. If you're someone who does deal with the chronic fatigue and you're trying to get back into exercising, for example, You need to start with where you're at. Maybe just do a 5-minute walk if that's all you can tolerate. Don't suddenly jump into a workout and cause your body to crash for several days. If you can only tolerate, putting away the dishes for the day, don't go in a whole deep clean of the entire house. If you can only tolerate, responding back to a few text messages, but getting on the phone for an hour to catch up with someone's going to be too much, then don't do that. You have to kind of learn what is going to stress your body out and what's going to cause you to overexert, and take one step back to maintain your energy where you can. It's that overexertion and that overstressed state of body that can actually perpetuate your illness and um cause you to feel worse in the long run. Even though it feels like you're being more productive in the moment, it can cause damage later. A huge thing that I work on with my clients is that energy management to prevent flare-ups.
Wow. That's great to know because I think a lot of times, especially if we're talking about nutrition, those are some of the factors we don't always think about, whether it's stress or sleep even. Can you talk a little bit about how important sleep is to this?
Yeah. Sleep is That's where all of your healing happens, when you're in your deep sleep. So, if you're someone who likes to stay up really late, scrolling on your phone, you keep all the lights in the house, you're staring at a TV screen, at a computer screen, your phone screen, you are only harming your sleep by all of that blue light exposure. And you're increasing your cortisol levels. And cortisol is an antagonist to melatonin. So the higher your cortisol levels or the influx of cortisol you have, you are causing a depletion of melatonin, or the non-production of it, really. And so that's what contributes that insomnia feeling that you get. So if you already know that you struggle with sleeping, like it takes you a long time to fall asleep, or you do go to sleep but then you wake up middle of the night, you need to work on your circadian rhythms. So, an easy way to do that is as soon as you wake up, and let me just caveat that most people think that sleeping is only in that exact moment, but having a good sleep routine also starts in the morning. So, when you wake up in the morning, we'll just start there. Don't go on your phone. Don't scroll on, whatever social media app, email, nothing. You just want to get up. And if the time allows for it, go step outside, get your face hitting the sun as soon as you can. Doesn't matter when you wake up. If there's sun out there, even if it's hazy, get that sun exposure. Even just for 5 minutes, that's going to help to sync your circadian rhythms. Throughout the day, whatever, do what you want to do. You want to make sure you're not overdoing it on the caffeine, because that contributes to the cortisol levels. And then now we're, suppressing our melatonin at night. Towards the nighttime, if you could, ideally, when the sun is starting to set, that's going to be your cue to start dimming the lights and backing off on the blue light in your phones and all. If that's not realistic, then like 30 minutes to an hour before bed at least is when you want to get off of your phone and minimize your blue light exposure. Now, once you're in bed, you need to make sure it's as dark in there as possible. Like, that's when you need these blackout curtains. You don't want any like random lights blinking. If you do have lights that blink, like we have a air conditioner unit heater, and there's like a blue light that's constantly blinking, literally just taped like multiple pieces of paper over it. You want it to be pitch black in there. I would suggest putting your phone on airplane mode. This is like another topic for another day, but I truly believe that EMFs do affect your health and your sleep. So I would suggest putting your phone in airplane mode. There's no reason really, unless you're on call as a healthcare worker, that you need your phone on, because your clock is still going to work. Like, you're still going to get your alarm to come through on airplane mode. Um, if you struggle to fall asleep, you can read a book with a little nightlight on, but that's really like, basic level of what I would suggest for someone who has trouble sleeping. And there's also supplements that you can consider taking.
What do you think is more important, a morning routine or a nighttime routine?
I would say a nighttime routine, because most people have the time to do the night routine versus like in the morning normally you just have to like get up and go. Especially if you work like a typical 9 to 5 job, you might not have the time for that. So I would say a nighttime routine, it'll allow you to, unwind, relax, and get in that nighttime mode. And so, sort of the things that I just went over are some of the things you can implement into your nighttime routine. Read the book. You could also journal. If you're someone who overthinks, ruminates on your thoughts, you can do a brain dump right before bed. Like, doesn't have to be a prompt or anything pretty to it. Just literally write down list style all the things that keep popping up in your head. And trust me, getting your thoughts on paper, it's a game changer. It helps your sleep so much. You can drink a nice tea as well before you're going to bed to help relax your body.
Those are all great tips. I think I agree with you. In my opinion, I think a nighttime routine is very important because the nighttime routine is setting you up for the next day. Something that it's kind of sounds silly, but that I like to do is that helps me fall asleep is start planning my outfit out for the next day as like part of my nighttime routine. So like when I wake up, I know what I'm gonna wear, and just thinking about it just makes me fall asleep. I don't know.
Love that. My motivation for an early bedtime is honestly like those seed cycle energy ball things. I need to come up with a cute name for it. And my coffee. If I go to bed sooner, I get to wake up earlier and I get to drink my coffee, read my book, and have that little treat in the morning. It's healthy and it tastes delicious. Like you got to have something that motivates you to want to start your day on a good note, if that makes sense.
Yes, I agree. Whether you're motivated by clothes or coffee, you have some kind of motivation to wake up to. When you work with your clients, how do you integrate mind body techniques into healing chronic fatigue and brain fog?
I start with where they're at. So if someone's like completely new to this journey, my favorite way to create that mind body connection is through exercise, through strength training, or weightlifting. But that's really going to help connect the mind to the muscle, to your body in a meaningful way. I start there. And then in addition to that, I have them start journaling. It can just start out as that brain dump type of journaling. The brain dumping at night would be an easy way to start that, or by following prompts. And then cycle syncing, again, really helps you connect with your body to learn, you know, each phase brings about a different personality in you, although it's subtle. And then your body also reacts differently throughout those phases. Learning to understand those signs can be a good way to connect with your body. So all of that takes time, but that's what I'm there for, to help them learn these signs and then to respond well to the signs. And hopefully that aids in their healing.
That's amazing. What's one thing that you wish more people understood about chronic fatigue and brain fog?
For those who don't experience it, I wish they understood just how debilitating it is and how much it just kind of sucks life out of you. For them to be a little bit more understanding and generous with that experience. And then for those who do struggle with chronic fatigue and brain fog, for them to understand that you can get better. It can be a difficult journey, but rewarding nonetheless. A lot of times, especially if you're seeing conventional doctors, you can kind of get brainwashed into, sorry, we don't know what's going on. There's nothing we can do for you. This is just how you're going to have to live life now. And so you kind of develop this, I've been there, this victim mindset of, there's nothing I can do. This is how my life is. I'm just going to be miserable forever. And so you do nothing to try and get better. So my wish is for them to understand that you can get better. You just have to make the right nutrition choices, lifestyle changes, and manage your energy, and things can get better.
Yeah, for someone who has chronic fatigue and or brain fog, and they're just starting the journey of healing. What are like the first 3 steps that you would recommend that they can start taking today?
Number one, I would say if you're going to just be doing this on your own, is to take a serious look at what you're eating. A lot of the time, food plays a direct role in our energy levels. So I would suggest considering starting with an elimination diet. And you can just literally type that in Google, what is an elimination diet, and the guidelines for that will pop up. But basically, it's going to be eliminating the top food allergens. That would be um, dairy, gluten, eggs, processed food. So that would include like your breads and your pastas and, pastries and stuff, and then refined sugar. They suggest cutting all of that out. And then you do that for like, I think 6 weeks or something, just to bring your inflammation levels down, get your body to calm down. And then you're introduced one food at a time over the course of like 2 weeks or something and see how you respond. I will say that the typical elimination diet does not include things like nightshades, which some people like me react to. So if you think you have a more like severe case, then you can look up the autoimmune protocol and they eliminate a lot of things. But, if you really are having a hard time, that would be my first step, is with your food. Second thing would be to take a look at your products that you use, like your hair care, skin care, body care, and really make sure that you're getting rid of things that contain parabens, phthalates, artificial colors, artificial flavors, and the dyes. Some people even react to gluten on their skin. I wouldn't Well, you can keep deep diving really, you can keep going further and further into that rabbit hole, but I would at least start there with swapping out your products for a non-toxic version. And again, there's a million and one websites that kind of list out what products to avoid. EWG is a good resource. So you could just type that in Google and their website will pop up. And then my third thing would be to make sure that and this might be a little TMI for some people, make sure you're having a bowel movement every day. For some people, their constipation might be so bad that it seems like they've done everything and still nothing has worked for them. I would say revisit point A on that, because if you're having extreme constipation, it's likely that your diet is playing a major role in that. For me, even though I don't have any issues with celiac, gluten was a huge reason I was so severely constipated, to the point where I got colonoscopies done, etc. to like, what is going on? So you need to make sure you're having a bowel movement every day, because otherwise you're reabsorbing toxins that your body's trying to excrete. And that's only going to, again, burden your liver and then contribute to the brain fog and fatigue.
Wow, it's been incredible. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge and all of your tips with us. So before we wrap things up, can you tell us, where can people follow you and where can they support you to stay in touch?
Yes, I have an Instagram, Fix Your Fatigue, where I post a lot of the tips that I do for myself to manage my chronic illness, and then tips I suggest for my clients. You can also find me on Facebook. It would just be my name, Briana Borgersen. And then I have my website. That's through Practice Better. I did just create a Substack, so I'm going to start writing articles on there. And that's also under my name, Briana Borgersen.
Amazing.
So,
Thank you so much for joining us today.
yes, thank you so much. It was great to talk with you.
Absolutely. And I'll have all of your links linked down in the show notes below so people can stay in touch. Thank you, Brianna.